The battle that never was, Operation Cottage. During World War II, Kiska, Alaska. Kiska was a significant battleground in the Aleutian Campaign where Japanese forces occupied the island for over a year. On August 15, 1943, in the fog-shrouded waters of the North Pacific, the largest Allied invasion force assembled in the Aleutian Campaign prepared for battle. Over 34,000 American and Canadian troops were about to storm the Japanese-held island of Kiska. What they didn't know was that they were about to fight one of the strangest battles in military history, a battle against an enemy that wasn't there. This is the story of Operation Cottage, where more Allied soldiers would die fighting ghosts than many units lost in actual combat. On June 6, 1942, while the world focused on the Battle of Midway, Japanese forces quietly occupied two remote islands in Alaska's Aleutian chain, Attu and Kiska. For the first time since the War of 1812, foreign enemies held American soil. Kiska was a desolate volcanic island, 22 miles long and shrouded in near-constant fog. Its treeless landscape and brutal weather made it seem like the edge of the world. Yet for over a year, nearly 5,400 Japanese soldiers had turned this barren rock into a fortress. The Japanese built elaborate underground bunkers, anti-aircraft positions, and defensive networks. They were dug in and ready for the massive Allied assault they knew was coming. Or so the Americans believed. What Allied commanders didn't know was that on the night of July 28, 1943, under cover of thick fog, the Japanese had pulled off one of the most successful military evacuations of World War II. In just 55 minutes, a fleet of Japanese cruisers and destroyers removed every single soldier from Kiska Island. Over 5,100 men vanished into the North Pacific mist, leaving behind only empty bunkers, booby traps, and 3 mongrel dogs. The island that Allied forces had spent months planning to assault was now completely uninhabited, but thick fog, radio silence, and the remoteness of the Aleutians meant this crucial intelligence never reached the invasion fleet. The Americans were about to invade an empty island. August 15, 1943. The invasion began with a thunderous naval bombardment. Battleships, cruisers, and destroyers poured thousands of shells into Kiska's positions. Wave after wave of bombers pummeled the island. American troops from the 7th Infantry Division hit the beaches first, expecting fierce resistance. Canadian forces from the 13th Infantry Brigade landed the next day. Both forces were elite units, trained and ready for brutal combat. But as the soldiers advanced inland through the fog, an eerie silence greeted them. No machine gun fire, no artillery, no desperate Japanese banzai charges, just the sound of their own footsteps and the ghostly wind across empty bunkers. The thick Aleutian fog that had hidden the Japanese evacuation now became the Allies' worst enemy. Visibility dropped to just a few feet. Units lost contact with each other. In the whiteout conditions, nervous soldiers began seeing enemies everywhere. "Japanese attack on the left flank," came the radio calls. Soldiers opened fire into the fog at shadows and sounds. What they were actually shooting at were other Allied units, equally confused and equally trigger-happy. In the most tragic incident, a group of American soldiers fired on Canadian troops, thinking they were Japanese. The Canadians fired back, believing they were under enemy attack. For precious minutes, Allies killed Allies while the real enemy was hundreds of miles away. The troops quickly discovered that the island had been evacuated. Despite the lack of Japanese soldiers, there still were American and Canadian casualties. Some were wounded and killed in friendly fire as nervous soldiers fired into the fog amongst the confusion. The deadly island. Even without Japanese defenders, Kiska proved deadly. The evacuating enemy had left behind carefully placed booby traps and mines. Soldiers triggered explosive devices in abandoned bunkers and along trails. But the island's greatest weapon was its own environment. The Aleutian weather turned savage. Freezing rain, howling winds, and sub-zero temperatures attacked the invasion force with merciless efficiency. Soldiers succumbed to exposure, hypothermia, and trench foot. The very conditions that had made Kiska such a miserable posting for the Japanese now claimed Allied lives. Dozens of men succumbed to exposure in the harsh Aleutian environment. By the time the battle ended, Operation Cottage had cost 122 Allied casualties, 24 Americans and 4 Canadians killed, with nearly 100 more wounded, all fighting an enemy that had vanished weeks before. When Allied commanders finally confirmed that Kiska was empty, the reaction was a mixture of relief and embarrassment. The largest military operation ever conducted in Alaska had been fought against nothing: ghosts. Intelligence failures had led to a tragic comedy of errors. Poor weather reconnaissance, communication breakdowns, and the fog of war, literal fog in this case, had combined to create a disaster. Yet Operation Cottage wasn't a complete failure. The invasion force had demonstrated their ability to coordinate massive amphibious operations in some of the world's worst conditions. These lessons would prove invaluable in future Pacific campaigns. Today, Kiska Island stands empty once again, visited only by researchers and the occasional fishing vessel. The concrete bunkers built by Japanese defenders still dot the landscape, slowly being reclaimed by Arctic vegetation. The Battle of Kiska serves as a sobering reminder that in war, the fog of confusion can be as deadly as any enemy bullet. Intelligence failures, communication breakdowns, and the harsh environment combine to create casualties in a battle that never should have been fought. But we remember the 28 Allied soldiers who died on Kiska not as victims of a military blunder, but as warriors who answered their nation's call. They died believing they were liberating American soil from a dangerous enemy. The tragedy of Kiska teaches us that sometimes the greatest enemy in war is war itself, its confusion, its chaos, and its capacity to extract a price even from victory. In the end, the Battle of Kiska was won not through courage or tactics, but by the simple fact that sometimes the enemy has other plans.